You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley.
Hey everyone, this is Nathaniel Nuon, writer, director, producer. You may know me for Residue and The Voices, just actually recently been released this year. So check it out if you guys get a chance. And I'm working on a very cool sci-fi film this year.
Nathaniel Nuon, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you. And we are going to dig into some fun stuff here because you are a fun guy who has your hands in just about every bucket that I can think of in film and entertainment. I want to give the audience a little bit more of a context of where you're coming from and what that really means. So I'm going to read a little bit from a bio. If it's wrong, just jump in afterwards and tell me, hey, let's fix this. We know it's the internet. You know how it goes. But let me read from here. Nathaniel Nuon, president and CEO, is the creative force behind Nuon Films, working in the entertainment industry for more than 22 years. An award-winning director, he has been creating feature and short films, music videos, promotional works, commercials, and more since 1995. His work has brought both national and international acclaim, winning the San Diego Filmmaker Award at the San Diego Film Festival, Viewer's Choice Award at the Temecula Valley Film Festival for the powerful short Residue. And it was very powerful, by the way. We're going to talk about that. And 2 Emmy Awards for the Best Short Film and Original Score. He was an invited panelist for the A Solo Art Film Festival in Italy on the topic of censored media in third world countries. Additionally, Nathaniel's presence is widely felt in his birth country of Cambodia, influencing filmmaking there and remains a voice for positive change. Nathaniel also leads projects as director, editor, and visual FX producer, including heading up a post-production house. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. On the post-production side, he's worked on films like Heist with Robert De Niro, The Prince with Bruce Willis, and USS Indianapolis with Nicolas Cage. Nathaniel is widely sought after for his skills in visual FX and virtual reality productions, both in the U.S. and abroad. Most recently, he contracted with the U.S. military for VR development and 3D animation for the field. He co-founded Third Realm Creations, specializing in augmented reality marketing and advertising, VR promotional and entertainment gaming, commercials, and films. Currently, it is lending its expertise to medical virtual reality training, VR live experiences, and AR books. Nathaniel, my goodness. What a mouthful. You are incredible, both from a filmmaking storytelling side, but also from this technical side. And I want to dive into it. But before I dive in to all those things that we just mentioned in your bio, because we will get to it, I want to start with something that you quoted, and I'll read it to you. Get your thoughts on this. So you said, quote, "Successful people make money. It's not that people who make money become successful, but that successful people attract money. They bring success to what they do." Now, I can take that on face value and understand it, but what does it mean to you?
It's, I'm trying to remember when I said it or quote that. So that's no, I think that one of the biggest thing is, I learned a lot. Like when growing up, I spent a lot of time with my father. He was a fisherman, so we spent a lot of time on the water. So I didn't really have to, being out in the water all the time. You're always isolated from everything. And I think one of the things that kind of always stuck with me and helped grow was when you leave this world, what do you leave behind? And each day that you come out and you do something, is it going to make an impact? Because you never know. Because I look at things right now. Like if I made a film and it may affect just one person, to change one person, or motivate one person to do something, that one person can change the lives of millions. Just depending on who they are. Because filmmakers who have made movies that changed my life, just watching it, and I'm like, it's a chain reaction that we don't really think about, things that we actually do. And I think in terms of success, it's the same thing. Like, when you start to create something and you create the bubble, it's a chain reaction. You may not see that right now. It could be, when you're gone, like years before you're dead, you never know. And it's just like, that's the whole thing about, like, you can go work an everyday job, make money, do this, but once you create art and do that success that we're talking about, that's where everything kind of branches out for you, and that's where you live forever. Like, it's a weird thing, we think about like having kids, having family, so our names can live on, but when you create art, when you do films, you paint something that lives on. We're still talking about artists like after 1,000 years after they're dead. 100 years after they're dead. So, and that's kind of like where I was getting at. Where sometimes when you look at that, that's where the moment that you create something or do something, that's when things are drawn to you. And I think you should be measured. Your success should be measured by like really not how much money you make, but how many people you affect.
Yeah, they say the artist is the first immortal.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that sentiment. I want to go all the way back to the beginning. It's no secret, you mentioned it a lot in your posts and bios and things like that, that you were a Cambodian refugee. I have a brother-in-law. His name is Santhala. He's from Laos, but he goes by Steve. And your birth name is Sith.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for Nathaniel?
Actually, when we came over to the States, my father, his name was Satya, his birth name. And then, he was so proud that he got his citizenship and everything. And he changed his name to Denny. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, we were just talking a while and it's like, well, if you're Denny, Nathaniel, like, whatever it was, it's like, hey, what if, I'm now Nathaniel. And it's just one of those things that like we're just tossing out American name. And it really, even within my family, it didn't even stick. No one really calls me Nathaniel or Nate. It's like, it's always been Sith. Like it's, even on set, like people are like sometimes when you work with me and like, you're like, everybody's running around and stuff, it's like, hey, where's Nathaniel? I was like, who? So it never really stuck, but I mean, it's just one of like, it's my American citizenship name, and Sif was always with my family, but yeah, that was we were just proud American and we felt that like it was, my dad was Daniel, and now like, well, I'm just gonna add AT, and it's like, no, I'm Nathaniel.
I love it. It has great alliteration. It's a great pseudonym for you. In entertainment. It rolls off the tongue, I have to say. And I relate to that so much because I'm the product of adoption. I myself am not adopted, but my father was adopted out of Germany and brought over to the States when he was 3, same age as you were. Mm-hmm. And he always recalls the story of standing in front of a judge with a bunch of other kids and having to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And this process of getting a citizenship and the type of love that creates for the United States. Because so when you mentioned we just love the United States and we were trying to assimilate, right? Yeah. Like that's a story I've been told my entire life from my dad about. There's something about it when you go get your citizenship and you become one and you belong somewhere. It makes your heart expand. Yeah. And I actually see that throughout a lot of your work. You're always like, you like to put a little quote in front of some of your movies, and it's always around love and love tying things together. And I think that's wonderful, man. You're a loving guy. You do have this super cool story about you guys not having a lot growing up and your dad finding this TV that someone was going to throw away. he keeps it, he sets it up in a house, and he turns it on, except the problem is it doesn't have any sound.
How does it sound?
So you're just watching the images. So take it from there. Tell us the story, because this is really how you first got into loving entertainment, right? And telling stories.
Yeah, man. That's like, so it was funny because, like, you know, I think we were living with our sponsors at the time. I can't remember. Like, we were somewhere, and, you know, he came home with this TV. I don't know. There's two sides to the story. My mom said he found it somewhere, and then like somewhere was thrown away. You know, he was dumpster diving, who knows? But he brought a TV back, and, you know, he was tinkering with it and got it working, man. And yeah, it you know, it was in black and white. It was the old school TV where it was still made of wood. You know, it was like,
yep, I had one of those.
Like, you know, it was like huge. So like, I was like, oh man, I was like, when the picture came out, I was fascinated. And I think that was their first, like, oh, well, he's busy in front of the TV now. Like, that's like my iPad now. You know, it's like with kids, they're like, go do something. Here's your iPad. So yeah, I was just stuck and glued in front of the TV, just watching stuff. And, you know, the thing is, like, there was no sound. It was like, I was just watching people mouths moving, but no one was actually saying anything. And, you know, as a kid, you growing up and you're like, man, I wonder what they're saying. It's like, you know, I'll just make up stuff. So I was watching it and just making up stories that I think, you know, and the weird part is, like, they were actually speaking in our native language in Cambodian. So I'm like, I had, you know, this, you know, American guy, like, in black and white, you know, saying something to his lady, but she's actually, in my mind, she's talking in Cambodian. And I'm like, so,
oh yeah.
So it was kind of like an interesting thing. But yeah, it was years later that then I went to a friend's house and I was watching the same shit. I always thought it was silent. So when I actually got to a friend's house and we were watching, I think it was like, I was a little older, not as much older, but, and they're like, I was like, holy shit. They're talking. They're actually talking. I was like, there's sound. I was like, it's not a silent movie. So like, and that from that point on, I'm like, man, everything I was thinking in my head, what they were actually saying was not, not exactly what they were actually saying. So, but yeah, that was my first taste of just, you know, having the actors and just talking in general, just making up dialogue as we were going. So,
do you remember any of the stories you made up?
Oh, man.
Were any of them good enough to remember?
No, most of them is like about cooking and eating. It's weird because, like, I was like, I don't know, I'm getting in trouble if I say some stuff, but you know, it was like, it was early school.
Judgment free zone, go for it.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, you know, early school stuff. Like, hey, I was watching. I might date myself. I was watching like Mr. Ed, the talking horse. You remember? Of course, Mr. Ed. So I was watching stuff like that, Nick at Night, and it was just like, but you know. It was Sabrina, like, no, it was farther back. It was, you know, like just all the Nick and Night shows. I can't even remember right off the back, but they were all in like just like these stage areas, you know, and they were just one location, and it was mostly dialogue, man. And, you know, it was shot just like a TV show. It was just like, you know, one camera every time you had some cuts, but it was just straightforward, like, you know, one location. And I'm like, well, what are they talking about? Because, you know, if I see a kitchen, they must be talking about cooking or something, right? As a kid, you're like, yeah. I was like, what else could they be talking about? You know, it's like, so, yeah, you know, when you're growing up as a kid, you never think like the adults would be arguing in the kitchen or talking about something separate that has nothing to do with the kitchen, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, when I was a kid, I was like, well, they're in the kitchen. They must be talking about, oh man, he's mad because maybe she's not cooking what he wants to cook. I don't know. Like, that's what I was envisioning.
I love these. I love these origin stories. I love how we sort of first get immersed in the arts and in entertainment, and how it starts in these really unique places for everybody. You grew up, you got a little bigger, like you said, you still were loving it, and you started making documentaries of your friends in high school. Yeah. And lo and behold, one of those won, and you said, man, maybe I can do this for the rest of my life. But my question to you is would you still be in film if you didn't win? What would happen if you didn't win in high school for that documentary you made? You
know, I might have been a pilot, or I might have been an engineer, because my dad was like, oh, yeah, you know, you're first generation in America. You got to make the family proud. You know, it's the whole Asian thing. It's like, you got to either, you know, it's like, I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. It's like, you know, everybody's going to be a doctor. You know, he's like, you're going to be an engineer. You're going to do this. And it's like, you know, and you know, I went there and like, you know, I kind of started shifting that way because you know, I always had a love for filmmaking, but I never really pursue it because, you know, growing up in Alabama and, you know, on the water, you just, you know, as a kid or just growing up in general as a teenager, you just never, had that vision to go out to the outside world until like, one day I was just like, maybe not, it's not what I want to do. And then, my dad, like, it wasn't until like I got closer to, almost grad, like, I think it was like, maybe a year. Yeah. In my, I want to say junior, like, I can't remember the conversation. It was one summer we're on a boat. He just asked me like flat out, I was like, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, because I was kind of scared to like tell him like, I kind of want to go make movies and do stuff, like I don't really want to be, a chemical engineer or a pilot, And he was like, and I kind of like said, I really want to make movies or just, be in entertainment. And he just, was very open to it. Like, yeah, like what, you have a film school you want to go to? I'm like, whoa, oh shit, I didn't think, so with my dad's approval after that, I was like, yeah, let's do this, so that was, after that, it was just, it was so much easier to, I knew what I wanted to do. It was, I don't know, it was always deep down, but it was just like, I never wanted to let my parents down, but also just like, with my dad loving the idea and just like pushing so hard for me to do this, so it's like, he's such a big influence on me. And, a lot of people don't realize that Nuon Films is actually named after him, not me.
Oh, wow. How so?
So, he produced our first like film and it didn't really go anywhere because we had halfway and we didn't know it. We learned a lot that they're making the film. But, he had a love for arts too, like it was just one of those things that, he financed the whole thing. He bought the cameras, did everything, put the team together. Like it was, he did all the producing and it was one of the things that like, when he passed, I was like, that's it kind of actually brought all my friends now together actually as my team. The producers I work with, like Mike, Charles, and Cedric, they're all like guys who actually worked on the original film with me, and we still make movies together. Mike and Charles are my producers, for every project I've done so far, and Cedric's the DP of voices. So, it kept like, it created a community and a family, and we felt that like, it was just the right thing to do. And it was, it was just named after him. So, and the logo is just me holding the first camera he bought, which is back there.
Yeah.
The XL1, we shot our first film on the XL1. So it's just, it felt right and it was the right thing to do. So,
I love that. I do. I think that's amazing. Your dad was kind of doing what you're doing. If you think about it, and he's a fisherman, to be good, right? Mm-hmm. That's a skill. He fixes a TV that someone couldn't fix. Mm-hmm. So he's got that engineering mind. Mm-hmm. And then he produced a film. He's got that artistic eye. And I don't think people understand fully that when you're in film, you're in technology today. Yeah. This is not some wild-eyed kid that's going to go, take a picture of a leaf falling from a tree or film a leaf falling from a tree. This is highly technical job. You have to have that engineering mind, but you have to mix it with the humanities, and that's how you get a storyteller to come out of it. So I think that's great. And I think you called him that day in an honest moment. One of my best friends in college was Chinese, or is Chinese. Yeah. And he wanted to be an actor. Yeah. But his dad was a scientist up in Boston, and so he couldn't change his major. He ended up he's a doctor to this day. Yeah. But I don't think he regrets that. He's doing well, but somewhere, right? Yeah. There's a second life there's a parallel universe where if he could just take a key and walk to another door, he would do that other thing. Yeah. And so kudos to your dad, I say. For sure. Yeah. So here you go. You're out of high school. You've told your dad you want to do this thing. And here's what's interesting. Everyone wants to go to NYU. Everyone wants to go to USC. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, you have 140 graduates from Full Sail University on this year's Oscar-nominated films. You had 7 of the graduates from Full Sail University part of this year's Best Picture nominations. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. I think it might have been the most represented university in the Academy Awards. And that's the school you went to, a little school called Full Sail University that started out of Dayton, Ohio, came down to Winter Park, Florida.
Yeah.
How did you decide to go there?
It was like, so I wanted to get through college really quick and just start making movies. And, Full Sail at the time was the place to go. You had this 13-month crash course, military. So, you're going, and it gave you real world experience. And I think that was, one of the things that we wanted, like me and my friends, that we all attended to get together. I was like, let's just go there and get out. Let's just start making movies, So yeah, that's basically what, because, at the time there was like, at least we didn't really have the internet or like YouTube to learn all this stuff now, which vast knowledge, or, podcasts like what you guys are doing. But it's just like, let's go there and come out and just like make movies. So it was, we knew right away that we just wanted to get going with it, and we wanted to learn as much as we can there and jump out of it. But when we went, Full Sail was just kind of like starting out. Like, it's massive now. It's a huge university now. But when we went, we were going to school. Oh my God! I mean, I had classes that I had 2-hour breaks, and it was open 24 hours. The labs and stuff.
I love that.
Yeah, we were. Man, I remember I remember being awake for 22 hours just doing stuff. Like, man, I want to get my time in. I mean, get to the lab, go home, take a shower, come back, and you're constantly there. Because at the time they had like the equipment in the lab, so you only had a certain amount of time to actually do stuff. So you don't want to miss your actual time to check in and actually work on learning Avid and stuff like that. So you had to be very proactive about it. So I'm like, yeah, well, I'm gonna go shower and come back home, and then eat something and go back to to school, and you're constantly there. So I definitely love that that training, and it made me very like I guess ready for real world kind of production, especially in the independent world. And when I came back, got out of there, and that's kind of like what we, my friends and I, kind of teamed up, and that's why we start making these projects. But I think that like now I can't speak for how it is now, but I think that like it's if they kept the same way of developing students and stuff, I think that it is definitely a very for me hands-on learning, because that's how I learn. I can watch stuff, but if I'm not doing it myself, I have like this muscle memory thing. And then if I'm reading something, I have to be doing something to kind of be walking around. So it's like I'm constantly having to something has to be moving in my world for me to receive the information. So it's and I'm very
this like Silicon Valley sort of incubator philosophy of what would happen if we never closed the lab and we threw a bunch of creative people in the room together. What comes out, right?
And the way my home is set up now, like I'm working 24 hours. So like I feel like it's sometimes when I'm if I'm not writing or not editing or not coloring or something, I'm just learning something. There's just something always happening in my world. I sleep a little bit, wake up, say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna write a little bit of this today, and then I'm gonna do this today. So it's definitely as a creative open like doors for me, but also like Full Sail definitely trained me to be very I guess diverse in a way, like my time, I'm like, oh, I can do this and this. And
it's played out. You're a dynamic dude for sure. And one of the first things you did when you came out is you punched the world in the face with this amazing short film, Residue, which is about the CIA bombings in Cambodia that very few people know about. I really liked this, Nathaniel. Like I did. I liked it a lot, and to be an independent short as well, how raw it felt was really a pleasure, and that's not lip service. I really have some thoughts about this short film. But what jumped out to me was knowing that here you are. You were working for NBC News affiliate in Mobile, Alabama. Then suddenly you get this contract with the military, and I'm wondering what influence, if any, did your work for the military at that time have on your decision to make that film? And did you have any sort of psychological tension about the fact that here you are working for the U.S. military while knowing the history of what the CIA did in Cambodia during the Vietnam War.
You know, that's it's funny because it did kind of happen, like it feels like it happened at the same time. No, you know, how Residue came about was, you know, my dad, he kept, you know, because my dad was in the military. That's the reason why we were able to get sponsorship over to the U.S. Relatively.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, so he helped out a lot with
That's how my dad got over here, military.
Yeah. So my dad's definitely, you know, there's a part of his life that, like, you know, I still talk to my mom about, like, hey, you know, there's some dark spots here. I need to fill in. But anyway, so him and I started talking. He was like, yeah, you know, he's like, yeah, you know, CIA was in Cambodia. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, this is way before, like, they released the articles for Operation Breakfast and all that stuff, the bombing, and we were like, I was like, what? Why was the CIA in Cambodia? And so he and his friends were actually telling me, like, the story of Residue. And it's like, that's how Pol Pot came to power, blah blah. And it's like, you know, this, you know, they, and I was like, how come we are not taught that in school? It's like, because you're not supposed to know that. It's like, and yeah, I was like, this is such a like, you know, because I was like, why did our country fall? You know, it's like, I was always, you know, and it was one of the things, like, it happens all the time. And it's like, Cambodia is just one of the countries that, you know, that if they have a way to do things, and I don't want to get too, you know, crazy in here, but like, yeah, the story, like, my dad was telling me, like, oh yeah, they bombed us. And it's like, you know, I'm like, that's how, you know, the Khmer Rouge came to power. And he was like, and I started researching. I couldn't find anything at the time, but then as we were putting together the screenplay of how, because it was about how, you know, Cambodia where it got taken over, not about, like, Khmer Rouge. It was just like, you know, because, like, you can't fix a problem, you can't figure out what the source was, you know. So that's what I was looking for. Is like, wait, how? You know, like, you keep tracking back, and it's like, eventually you'll find the answer. And that was, you know, when they told me, I'm like, man, this is a story there. I wanted to tell it.
Yeah.
You know, I had a feature length planned out and everything, but I was like, you know what? I can't afford it right now. I said, let's just condense it to a short. And this is basically what we did. And I had a guy who actually lived through the bombing build a hut for me. So it was, like, very authentic. He was like, oh, it's not how it looks like that. It's like, he's like, he literally, like, he was our production designer. He just actually built everything and set everything up. I was like, man, he's like, yeah, once you're done, I take it. I can go put it over there and live in there because that's basically livable. I was like, so he built a full on, like, I was like, okay, yeah, that's authentic. But yeah, everything in the film, you know, it was more about, like, it was very dialogue driven, obviously. But I wanted to get a message out because at the time, like, no one knew about it. No one, like, and I think recently, I think a couple of years farther back, but they released Operation Menu, which was the bombing of like the southern border of Cambodia.
But Nathaniel, people still don't know about it. Just because they released that,
yeah,
like,
no one reads it. You know,
like, yeah. Have you been on Twitter? Like, no one knows. No one knows. And so, if you decide to make a feature out of this, you have to promise you're going to reach out to me. You have to.
I will, man.
You have to reach out to me. I think this is potentially a game-changing feature if you were to make it. But speaking of Twitter, because I find this interesting, you find a lot of people in Twitter sort of pining for and thirsty for communism. And then whenever you talk to anyone who came from a communist place, they're like, you guys are fucking crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, why do you think that is? Why do you think people want communism?
You know, honestly, I don't know, man. It's like, you know, I've traveled a lot. I've seen a lot of different places. I mean, you know, been to a lot of different places. I've talked to a lot of different people, and I spent a lot of time in Cambodia, and I feel like, you know, maybe they just see, you know, maybe they just don't have enough information. They're not living under that, because, you know, my mom, you know, she escaped technically a communist regime. You know, like, you know, she came here and she's happy as hell. On top of that, she actually got her citizenship too. She's happy as hell too. Right. She changed her name to Donnie, which is, you know, really cool. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, man. I really can't dig into their mind, but, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, seeing my parents, you know, come here, and love this country so much and just wanted to be American, and they did, they became American. They had American citizenship and their names and stuff, and they're just proud. And I don't know, man. It's like, when my mom and I went back and visit our country, and, she was sad because she just felt like, she just wished that her family could like benefit living here too. It's just, it's and I talked to her about it. She's just like, people just there don't, at least in that country. And then they don't, like, they've never been here, so they don't know how good it is. And they never been in a country that they was being treated really, really terrible, to come to a country that's been treated really, really, amazing, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it's, I guess what I can, having grown up in, both sides, where coming from like a torn country because of like war broken and kind of a communist state, and two parents that who survived it and lived under that regime, and then coming here and see how happy they are and how like they're able to prospect and just move up the world society, because my dad came here with nothing, my mom came here with nothing, and now they, when they had to develop, they built their own business and stuff. So I think that, like,
I love it.
It's just one of those things, man. It's like I feel like a lot of people are not in, when you talk about walking in somebody else's shoes, I just feel like some people are just not aware about it, and they've never walked in the other person's shoes, and they don't realize what it is,
Exactly. I think that's a wonderful take. What you just said at the end, walk in someone else's shoes. If I dropped you in there, whoever you are on the internet, yeah. I mean, how long would you survive? It reminds me of a question that Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the great book Sapiens and Homo Deus, and essential books in my mind, but he posed the question, if I put you and a chimpanzee on an island, who would live longer? Who would survive? And many people, his take is that the chimpanzee would survive longer.
Yeah.
Because he could handle it. He could go out and make hay, make do, and you would fall apart pretty quickly. You mentioned the Khmer Rouge. I know what it is. I looked it up, but I want you to contextualize it for people, because you mentioned it a couple of times. They may not know what what you're referencing.
Yeah, it was very bad. So they were a radical, very extreme group of like that believed that we, in order to reset our country in Cambodia, was to go back to ground zero, and basically anybody who was educated or wore glasses or anything were to be killed and executed because they were a danger to the new society. So, you couldn't, if you spoke multiple language, if you were a doctor, you were all executed. Everybody had to work in the field, and it was just basically structured like, hey, we all work together, we all benefit together. And if you thought outside the bubble, you're executed, you're dead. You can't be doctors, lawyers, teachers, whatever, performing artists. They killed pretty much every artist in our country. And someone that's that was thing. I think it's the big effect on my father was, my dad was like, he had all these amazing artists and musicians that he looked up to that were pretty much murdered and executed during the Khmer Rouge. But yeah, they were just a radical, extreme group that believed that in order to fix our country was to basically kill everybody who was smart or that didn't think like they did, and they were armed and we weren't, and so
and we talk about this stuff like it's in the past too, Nathaniel, and it's really not. I mean, the scientists who sort of let the world know that coronavirus was out there and potentially got outside of that lab in Wuhan, he got murdered.
Yeah.
He was killed. This isn't something you're talking about from, it is something you're talking about that happened a long time ago, 40, 50, 60 years ago, but it happens today is my point. And we need to be vigilant against the killing of people who are smart and artistic and different. And let's fight a little harder for the painted bird, if you will. Right. It's always it's beautiful to be the painted bird. It's also dangerous to be the painted bird.
It is, man. It's like, when Aristotle said, "Hey, this is," I think we're looking at the heavens wrong. And if you start executing and killing people who think outside completely, and I'm thinking about artistically, in the realm of of just stuff in general, because I love sci-fi. I'm a big sci-fi fan. It's like, I do believe that we have multiple universe. I think that there's with Voices, I'm going to touch a little bit on that. Voices is about, spirituality, but also just, where the soul and life goes after. So it's like, I feel like, if science can't explain that, we're there's religion and Bibles and like things that people are talking about like throughout human history, we have a sense of like this as humanity. We know there's something bigger than us. Mm-hmm. And I think artists and creative people, looking at like some of the most amazing artists from the Renaissance period, and they even went there. Their visions are completely like influenced by like thinking outside the box, because I think that's how we grow as a human race, and that I think that like if you limit that, and I think talking back to the Khmer Rouge, it's just like, oh, if you believe or you think this is going to be the solution, then we're going to kill you because we don't think that. If you cap that off, that's never change or nothing's evolution or like the intellectual evolution is never going to happen because you can't grow if you just cap yourself, cap the society off right here. You got to let them think outside the box and grow. And that's how we are as a human race today because if no one thought outside the box, none of this stuff is going to happen.
There's a new term called useless humans or useless. I don't think humans is the right word. I'm trying to think of the word, but it's this fear. It's this fear that in 50 years, half of society will have no skill set that is better than an AI or a robot. And that may be the case. But why does that render them useless? It's like you have a lot of uses as a human being, and your uses are infinite because there are things that an AI might do from a skill set better, and maybe they even talk to you and can fall in love with them. But even if your job is to fall in love with a robot, that's a use, right? So I don't know. It weirds me out when people doubt the potential and power of the human ingenuity and the human intellect. And I never talk about this stuff, but I'm definitely not a Thomas Malthus guy. I don't believe that we can only have so many humans or we're all going to die off. I think you give people potential, and someone like Elon Musk comes along and says, okay, we're growing too big for this planet. Let me get you to Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. Back to film.
We kind of got sidetracked there for a second. I apologize.
That's what we do on the Make It podcast. That's what we do on the Make It podcast. It's, it's all good. Our audience is with us. I promise you. You started Nuon Films right after that, about 2011. Go out on your own. It's a bold move. Before then, you were working for other people, helping their film dreams come true and their production projects come to fruition. You went out on your own. What did it take to make that transition? Were you nervous?
Yeah. Well, I mean, every new endeavor is always
And what did it take basically to make that move? By the way,
Man, it's just like one day, I spoke with my long-term business partner Charles, who went to film school with me. I'd known Charles since we were in middle school, so we've been making movies forever. And then I was like, let's if we're gonna do this, we just need to just do this, man. Let's just focus and build a brand. If we keep working for other people, it becomes a day job and you're just doing a 9-to-5 constantly, just everything. And you're never going to be able to just break free from that because you're so busy building someone else's dream or someone else's business.
Yeah.
And I just really, at one point, just like, we kind of like saved up enough. We were financially like kind of okay from the contracts, and was like, let's just go out and let's invest everything we got from the military contract and just do this, ourselves. So we went out, bought us a couple, we'll bought us some Reds, and just start at it, man. It's like, and
going high class on us right away.
Well, I always had, it's kind of like, well, now you're gonna be like, oh, he's one of the Red guys. No,
I love Red. I love Red. Just because they're portable. Yeah. You can shoot.
Well, they were affordable.
You can shoot and you can pop in.
Yeah, I don't think I could. Like at the time, we wouldn't be able to dump my money on getting us an Alexa LL.
Oh yeah. No, but I maybe they were affordable. I mean, I said they're portable. They were smaller cameras. Right, they're smaller rigs.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, I should have enunciated that.
It's all good. But I've every production I was working on, from the first couple films I was working, we were working with the Red One and stuff. So I was always familiar with the Red workflow. So that didn't, I didn't want to switch or change any kind of into another ecosystem. Which now, back then you had it was kind of a pain in the ass, but now it's everything with Premiere and Hell DaVinci now is editing software, so it's everything's just easier to mixing footage and stuff. So it doesn't matter what you're using now, but back then we just decided to it was I just want the highest resolution, and we were just going to shoot this, and and I was just used to post stuff for visual effects, so Red was just the most straight thing to go for, was when you're dealing with post and visual effects stuff. So but even before that, we were shooting on DSLRs, man. We were doing shooting a lot of music videos on the D90 and up to the 7Ds. It's I mean, even then I was just trying to push the limit, and I knew from a technical aspects 1080, and then when I actually started using the Red, I'm like, man, I'm just shooting 4K. It's and we're only mastering in 1080, so why the hell am I not shooting on this thing? And it's we were able to reframe and do everything we want visually. Digital camera moves that we can do, because obviously now you can't do it because everything's mastered in 4K, so you have to shoot at least 12K or 8K now to do what we were doing back then. But yeah, the decision was made because of from a technical aspect. It wasn't a creative aspect. Because I knew some of the stuff that the clients and stuff that we were actually going to go into, and the films that I wanted to make was very more I wouldn't say experimental, but it was just it was just something that I felt that it didn't need the a high-end camera. We didn't need the use of Alexa right now, because we were still growing. We're just a company that was just kind of moving forward. So we needed something that was more versatile, that can handle commercials and do all stuff. And
right.
And I'm pretty sure the Alexa guys are going to be like, you know what you're talking about. But I'm just saying it worked for me because I was used to the workflow. Also.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people get all. Don't get all Ford and Chevy on me. It's let's see what's the story is the question. What's the story?
So my thing is when I actually got that question the other day. Hey, what camera would you prefer? It's when I was I told him the story. So when I was in LA, I ordered an Uber, and I needed to get to this restaurant for a meeting. Honestly, I didn't care what car picked me up. I just needed to get there. Yeah. So I don't care what camera I'm using. I just need to make the movie. Yep. That's it.
That's it.
So that's the analogy I gave them. And they're like, that makes a lot of sense, because if the Uber never shows up, it doesn't matter. I'm never getting to that restaurant on time. So it's
exactly. That's beautiful. I'm going to steal that from you if you don't mind. I think it's wonderful. Fast forward. You did mention rewind and fast forward. You mentioned a moment ago, The Voices, your latest feature film, out on multiple streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime. And everyone should go out and rent it and watch it or buy it. But fast forward from 2012, when you started Nuon Films, to now, I was wondering if you had a little inspiration from the past to make this film today. And I'll tell you what I mean. In 2012, you led a fundraising campaign to raise money to help surgically restore the sight of Mr. Kit Singh, an actor who was in your short film Residue. Yeah. Did his issues with sight have any influence on you writing Voices, which is it's a horror film about a person that doesn't have sight, who's blind.
I actually never thought about that in that sense. When he was going through those troubles, and we just wanted to help him out, and then get it because he had the surgery for cataracts.
Cataracts, yep.
Yeah. So honestly, I never tied it, but voices has always been on the back burner for a long time, and actually, the idea came when I moved back from Orlando to help my mom out after Katrina. Because I was just staying with her, and then her house pretty much got obliterated because we live on the waterfront, and so it took a year or two just to get her house back restored and built again. And I was having dinner with her, and lunch, and we were just chatting, and she told me this interesting dream that she had, because I was kind of talking about my dad and her and their journey here to America, and and she was saying like, oh yeah, before she said, yeah, this happened to me, and then somehow we just started talking about dreams, and she said she had a recurring dream over and over for weeks about this girl, little girl, that kept on coming to our house and knocking on the door, and she would open the door, and the little girl would ask like, hey, can I stay with you guys? And mom was like, no, and she would just say no, and it kept on going for weeks, and then finally she said, oh, fine, whatever. And she told my grandma the story or the dream about the dream, and my grandma was like, oh, well, that's normal, you're pregnant and you're gonna have a baby girl. And then 9 months later my sister was born, and I was like, wait, what? And then my mom was like, yeah, she was really nonchalant about it. So I was like, okay, that's a really cool story. I'm like, I didn't know that was like, yeah. So I started digging, kind of researching a little bit, and I realized that it was heavily rooted in our culture, like in Southeast Asia, that like, a woman who's experiencing pregnancy kind of like developed this super heightened sense of like the supernatural. It was something, and then, the whole idea of like spirits wanting to come back and relive their life and flesh out their karma, so they can move on to the next world, move on to the next whatever you want to call it. So I thought that was really, really intriguing. So I had that idea always down. It wasn't until like I started giving the idea to other people that kind of like developed with me, and it just came back as slash or horror and stuff. It's like, and then one thing that's always terrified me, funny thing enough, was I was actually blinded for like 2 weeks. So I couldn't see. Yeah, I couldn't see shit for 2 weeks, and it was scary as hell. Just because like I think my first layer of my I give a cover, like I can't remember.
Did you do LASIK?
No. It was just like I got chemicals in my eyes, and it's just like I couldn't open it for nothing. So I had like I had to basically had powerful eye drops and stuff, and they said I would have had to have surgery if it got worse, if it didn't heal the top layer of it. I can't remember for the life of me, but they said that you just have to wear these shades and keep your eyes closed, and and it was for 2 weeks. I was literally just blind. I was like and I was like, man, what if I have to live like this? So it was the scariest thing in my life. And that's where it kind of like merged the two ideas. It's like, what scared me, but also what was an interesting idea from my mom, just kind of merged. And that's where voices kind of came up, and everybody was like, when I pitched the idea to investors and just people I talked to, it's like, well, what's the story about? Well, it's about a blind girl who has dead people. They're like, oh, just like Sixth Sense? Yeah, but she's blind though. Like it's different, she's visually impaired. She can't see. Like, oh, so like, she's talking to dead people. She don't realize that. I'm like, yeah, she don't. Like the audience knows that she's talking to dead people, but she doesn't.
Right. I love the integration of the story. You mentioned investors. I know you started out with 2, and then one dropped out at the last minute. But you plowed forward anyway.
Yeah,
so what did you have to do? What did you have to give up? How did you lower the budget to be able to move forward and get it going?
Oh man, it was crazy. So we, I had made a bunch of trips back and forth to LA, and we were just, talking to a couple of different people. They loved the idea. They're like, oh my God, we're on board. And we were in a different tier at the time. And then, and I honestly, I don't know why they even changed their mind. We were on like,
you mean budget tier?
Yeah, budget. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Budget and tiers. So we were up there, man. We were I guess I can say numbers, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, we were looking at, roughly around, voices were supposed to be made for like about, 1.5 million or something, so we were decent. And, we went back and forth and talked to them. Everybody was on board. And, I don't know, like, they got cold feet or something. And so they dropped out. And then, we lost the majority of the funding. And, I talked to my other investor here, Brad. I was in Alabama. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I had this vision, this, with a bigger scale of the film, and, bigger names to kind of push it to more like, a supernatural drama. It's, I knew that if I didn't do it now, that I had to wait, another year and two. I'm glad I did it, because the whole pandemic hit, and I was like, man, it's like, if I never would have made this movie, I've just been sitting here for like another 4 years doing nothing, or just, and so I made a decision. I talked to him, and I'm like, he's like, you think you can do it? What you have? I'm like, yeah, we just got to scale everything. And I talked to, like my close friends, my producer and stuff, like, can we do this? Because, Voices it was the original script is 120 pages, so it's a lengthy script.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So like, about 20, 30 minutes of the movie is cut out. So a lot of people don't know that we shot the whole thing. So, like,
you shot every page?
Yeah, I do. It's like 15 pages, and like almost like a little 15 pages per day, and we were doing 15 days a shoot, because that's all we can afford, and it was no room for error. And I was like, I went back and I talked to everybody, and in fact, this is actually still my wall of like all my notes for Voices. But the funny thing is, like, we were going through it, and we're like, can we do this? And then everybody's, they were kind of questioning themselves. I'm like, and I asked, like, everybody was asking, can we do this? And then, like, I just stopped, and I'm like, guys, the question we should ask is, like, should we do this? Mm-hmm. And everybody was like, hell yeah. It's like, then that's our answer. It's not can we should. So we figured it out, and we made it happen, man. It was just like going back and restructuring and casting, not bigger names. So we went into like a different tier of actors, and we lucked up with Valerie and like Jonathan, like all these guys, and and Judy was an amazing casting director. So we were able to get all these great talent on the project. But I was also like very personally attached to the project, just because of like the way the script was designed. I don't think a lot of people understand like what went into Voices. Because like when I was actually developing the story, Mike and Charles, the producers, we had different spitballing ideas. We had different people come in and kind of help out with with some developments, and we wouldn't liking the way that it was going.
Yeah,
it was either crazy super horror or like just like slasher. It just didn't make any sense. And I'm like, man, this stuff is not like we're forgetting. It didn't make any just didn't make sense to me. So one day I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna like research, and I don't know what got into me, or I was just looking. I was like, man, I'm just curious, like how do like visually impaired people or blind people actually watch movies? And I just started researching. I got on like YouTube and started watching a bunch of like visually impaired people and blind people like critiquing movies or just watching. And I'm like, holy crap, there's audio description. So I'm like, they actually watch movies. That's really and I learned something really new. And now I'm like. So I spent the whole night, like I was up all night and writing notes, and then we went back to our script meeting for Voices. I was like, guys, we're doing this all wrong. We need to make movie. We need to make a movie. This movie we're trying to make is for the wrong people. And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, we're trying to make it for people who can see. And they're like, yeah. I was like, no, we should be making it for people who can't see. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Have you been sleeping, or like what are you on? Yeah. And I was like, no, hear me out. And I explained about audio description. I explained about like I think that we need to focus on making a movie for visually impaired people and write the script and focus around like pacing and description or dialogue for visually impaired people. So when people who are blind or like visually impaired are watching or listening to it, they can get the same experience for people who can see. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. He's like, you're onto something. So then we started developing the idea around that, and that's where like we all became like, it just shaped into what, you know, what everybody's seeing now. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it was something unique and like something I loved about it, and you know, also something, you know, kind of like personal to me, like a secret. Like people are like, oh, what do you? Yeah, I mean, if you actually, I'll send you a link for an audio description thing that we did, and yeah. So it's one of the things that's really very close to heart for me for voices, you know, and not just the story that is about like, you know, my mom's that was the inspiration behind it, but also just the fact that, you know, voices was, you know, some sort of like technically, you know, for me, you know, I you know, we made it visually, kind of visually stunning for people who can see, but we also made it like where it's audible and like everything that's being described, and the pacing to give time for audio description to be laid over for people who are visually impaired to give that time. Yeah. Because, you know, when you watch a movie whose actions, like it just moves so quickly. Imagine trying to listen to an audiobook at like, you know, 3 times speed. Oh, he runs down the highway. It's really, I mean, they're used to hearing that kind of stuff, but they don't like, I feel like they're missing the experience of actual pacing of the film. For me, you know, like, so I pace the film for somebody who's visually impaired versus somebody who's watching it. I'm
going to have to rewatch it again now. I'm going to watch it again and maybe just watch it in the dark with my eyes closed and like see what happens. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, and then I think like Valerie, we talked about it sometimes, and then you know, like I actually didn't watch any of the auditions until like the last 10. We had so many auditions for Lily, and Mike.
Now let me hop in here because I do know about this story, but I want you to tell me, and I want to contextualize it for the audience. So so Lily is the main character in The Voices, and the Valerie you're referring to is Valerie Jane Parker. She was in Wrong Turn. She's in a lot of different. She's been in a lot of different shows, commercials, movies. Great resume. A friend of the podcast as well, and one hell of a babka baker. So take it from there, and because this casting experience was wild.
Yeah. So you know, I was on this whole thing where I just wanted to hear people. You know, once we flushed out the script, we had a like I don't remember how many revisions. I had to go look back and find a draft to see how many revisions we had, but we had a lot of revisions. So we finally were happy with the revisions. And you know, one of the things that we were doing an audition, like Mike would, like we were in the office, Mike would just watch all these auditions that were being submitted, and I was going through and just kind of making notes on like the scripts of how I want things to be. I actually never watched the audition. I just listened to all of them. I told them, hey, just turn it up and like let me hear them. So I actually listened to everyone who auditioned for Lily, and if their voice resonated with me, I would tell them, hey, mark her, and then like let's go back to her. So he made like, you know, a couple people that were marked, and then I went back and actually just once everything was there, because my thought was like, you know, I wanted to hear what Lily sounded like, her cadence, the way she spoke and stuff, and how like the actors were interpreting the lines, and if she sounded like Lily versus like if she looked like Lily.
But my question for you though is how, what do you take from that? Like can you actually cast like that again? And then what does Valerie take from that when she goes to her next audition? I mean, is she supposed to try to remember, oh wait, I had great enunciation and a soft voice, and that's why Nathaniel picked me? Like how do we use this information in further auditions and casting?
No, I would definitely like that was how like it was. Voices is a different like situation. I would never cast a movie like that again. It was just something that like I knew like I wanted like the like the visually impaired people to have something that a voice that it sounded like it was their hero, their mother, and just somebody they can follow along with, and they had to have that voice, and and I wasn't casting based off race, who you were, and all. So I just wanted to hear you, if you deliver it and you sounded like a Lily, then I turn around, because remember, like I told you, when I was making this movie, it wasn't for people who could see. It was people who were visually impaired.
Visually impaired.
So yeah, so I was just casting around like what I could hear, and her voice just struck me. I was like, okay, yeah, like let's do that. And then when we had the first, like, the top 10, I actually then saw how she looked. Like I saw everybody else. I was like, you know what? Yeah. And that's when we started mixing and matching, like, okay, let's do some chemistry read with these guys. And but yeah, I mean, the whole cast, and even Jonathan, it wasn't just Valerie, like all Will, the other character, her husband, I did the exact same thing. Like all the lead characters, I cast based off their, like, the way they spoke and how they sounded. And the funny thing was, and after one night we were finishing shooting up the and we went up to a karaoke bar, and every one of those mofos can sing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. It's like they get up in there, they're like, they were like singing. They did a duet, like Valerie and Jonathan were singing Aladdin, A Whole New World. I'm like, and then my Mike, he like kind of tapped me on the and I was like, yeah, it's like, yeah, you're back to work. It's like you were listening to him. I was like, yeah. So it was.
It's amazing when stuff like that happens, right? Like when you make those little discoveries about people, it's unexpected, and you're like, you're a whole different person than I thought you were. I had a party over Christmas at my house.
Yeah.
So we got all these people in the house, right? And I have like a baby grand in the other room, and it's like my favorite thing in the house. So I play like an hour or two a day. And all of a sudden, we've got like some drinks in us. Everyone's gotten a little bit loose. We've downed 15 bottles of wine. The bourbon is gone. Like we're feeling really rosy. And before I know it, one person sits down and we all sing Hallelujah together. And she's playing it. And I'm like, I didn't know you played piano. I've known you for a really long time, and I didn't know you played piano. She got up. Another guy that I knew for a while sits down, and he starts playing like Billy Joel.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, wait, you play piano also? And then it turns out like everyone in that room had some sort of either singing or musical or both talent. And it's just amazing. It's like an experiment you should just have with your own friend group. Just just slide a guitar out into the middle of a room and see who picks it up, or take them to, in your case, a karaoke bar, for example. I love that whole story, how you did that, and kudos. It turned out great.
I wouldn't advise anybody to go cast like that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but don't cast like that. Yeah, only for voices.
No, interrupt away, and only cast that way if it's a movie about visually impaired people. It seems to make sense in that context. We have to talk about Third Realm Creations before I let you go.
Yeah,
Daniel, this is incredible. You really are going to, in my opinion, balance the scales of independent film and big budget film, because in a big budget film, and our audience likely knows this, but just to put it into context, you'll go to a place like a Technicolor and they'll have a giant stage and they'll set up, these giant contraptions and setups. I once saw a 100 camera setup just to do imaging and sort of like rendering in a computer and software. So basically you would get inside like in a black suit or naked, and pictures, the camera would take it all around you. Then you could put that into a computer and get it right. And these are big, expensive processes. If you had to create, if you look at like a movie like Tenet, which I thought, even though it didn't win a lot of stuff at the Academy Awards, it easily had to be the hardest film to make of the year. Easily. Those set pieces were all like half scale and real. The caves, the buildings, the way they explode, the technical muscle you have to sort of understand how to invert something without just clicking the reverse button, and so to speak, button. Those are big, massive, expensive set pieces. And what you're doing here is you're saying, hey, let's use virtual reality, augmented reality, and put it on a giant screen and let these things happen and film it. and continue to let that process get better and better and better. So my question to you is kind of more like a learning exercise for myself. Can you talk about some of the technical achievements you've had thus far, and where you're looking to go with LED walls, and which is what you're calling the technology, LED wall?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Disney's kind of like on the forefront of that right now. They're using, right now that everybody's coined, like the term is virtual production, but it's heavily used with LED wall. It's just basically the idea of like eventually going to replace green screen. I think as the technology and the game engine, or like what drives the, let me step back a little bit. We've been like the technology's always been here. Cameron was using it's basically rear screen projection. You project something on the wall. I mean, they were doing it back in, oh my God, in the early black and white films and silent films, where you just project something in a projector and they would shoot an actor in front of it.
Right.
But the only difference between what we have now and what they didn't have, they had everything had to be locked off. It's because if you moved, you would lose the idea of like the depth and the parallax. Because there was no sense of a tracking system. Now, with VR coming out with all like, the Oculus and the Vives and stuff, like all these sensors are being hacked to use for virtual production tracking systems. So your headset that when you move around, you can see your world. It's basically now the camera. So when the camera moves around, the world that's actually on the LED wall is moving around too. So
got it.
So now it actually works closely hand in hand. So you get that parallax shift for the perspective actually works. So if you move the camera forward, the environment should shift forward for you, just like in real life. So this is the game changing of like how it is. And the next step is basically the idea of like how it gets more realistic with it. People are like, oh, well, LED wall is not gonna, like how realistic can you get? It's getting super realistic because, you look at like technology right now, like, I remember when 720p TVs came out, HD, now we're at 8K TVs now. It's only going to get more and more like defined and more crystal clear on where we're looking at. Now that we have the tracking technology, we just waiting on the ability, like where everything becomes super realistic, where you can't tell the difference anymore. Right now, like you have, especially what we're shooting now, like you don't need an epic wide shot of like, unless depending on what stop you're on, but like everything's in focus in there, because, in a real camera, you always have some sort of like, shift in focus. And I think that like, with the LED wall, it's still sometimes a little soft, but, if you create the world and you stage everything around it, it's definitely believable. Like
that's what I was going to ask you is, do you still build set pieces in front of the LED wall?
Yeah, you do. You have to, because, the LED wall, all it's going to do is spill the light, the natural lighting around it. And then that, it's not taking away from G&E's job. It's just basically actually making the job easier, but enhancing it, because now you have the light spill from the LED wall. And then the light that's actually supposed to be in the realistic environment, say like I'm in the desert, standing in the desert. All I have to do is build, a platform with sand that the actor's standing on, and then the wall shows the desert. And they're standing there, and the light bouncing from the wall is basically illuminating the actor from each side. So when you shoot from a back shot, and that is there. It's like it's minimal lighting. It's good.
It feels like Disney is paying a lot more for this than what you would charge. So how are you making this affordable for independent filmmakers?
Well, I mean, Disney's using the top of the line stuff. We're just using, stuff that's out right now. Like you can get online right now and just say, hey, I'm going to go buy a Vive tracker, a HTC Vive tracker. Like it's just stuff that you actually have that you can purchase right now. And then, Unreal has, stuff to work, basically be able to like make things work right out of the box. You can put a little Vive tracker puck on your camera and just start shooting away. Hell, you can actually just do it on a projector. It doesn't matter. You don't really need an LED wall. It's just the idea of like the ability to track your camera and move in the real space that that it's supposed to. So, I mean, I look at it from a perspective of like, okay, well, if they're spending that X amount of money, and I can do exactly the same thing, but like produce a quality, like, if our film could look like 20 million, then I think that's going to be great, because in an independent world, everybody's like, well, the hardest thing about making a sci-fi looks really awesome, because like, you have this budget limitation and this constraint. Like, oh, well, we have to have all these craziness and all this stuff. And we have, build these set pieces and stuff. Like, not with this anymore. I mean, like you look at it, you could be on a spaceship and you only have to build like a few set pieces where they're actually interacting and embarking, So,
Right.
yeah. So for me, yeah, I think that, this thing will fill in the gap between, independent filmmakers who's actually like ahead of the game, like just way like, okay, we know this is going to shift, because basically LED wall is basically what green screen did for Lucas when it first started. Like this is the first evolution of it. It's only gonna, like, we don't even know, like I don't even know, like personally, like where it's gonna actually go, because there's so much stuff every day. Like I'm testing stuff, I'm learning stuff. I'm like, oh my god, like let's try this. Like hey, let's go back to doing miniatures. Let's just print out, like maybe a 1/3 scale, and then let's put it in front of the LED wall with the light, do that, and then we do everything else. We don't have to do full on CG animation anymore. We just put it in front of the LED wall. So it's just changing everything, that how we think and how we do stuff. And you can have a production that's only spending $1 million, but the film looks like it's $20-30 million because of like the LED technology. You're able to go places, do things, shoot multiple locations. And, when I did voices, I had to do like a shitload of locations in 15 days. Now, like the next sci-fi film I'm doing, it's like we have like, a ton of locations. Hell, like some of the locations don't even exist. We're on another planet. So I'm like, How do you build another planet easily? So you have, instead of using green screens and have to deal with that stuff, you literally just put it on the LED wall and create that asset that you need early on, and you can be developing. So it will add production value to an independent filmmaker, to an independent film. And, and like, you don't have to pay the cost of the big budget people anymore. It's like, it's just, if like what you're going for, it's just, I don't know if like, these guys, like they have a lot of money just to basically like test stuff and do stuff. And as independent people, we don't really, I can't say, hey, I need $500,000 to go and test this idea that I had that might work and might not work,
Right.
So, with us, it's like we look at what we have, and, and I think that like, with the VR technology that's moving closely right now, like with Oculus and Vive, Index, all these new headsets that are coming out, and using that as technology to do what we're talking about, for a different use.
But I think that's the answer. I think, you ask the question, hey, independent filmmakers can't just say, hey, can I have $500,000 to go test this thing? Maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But it's like, that's the gap. That's how we get bludgeoned with money. Essentially, it's like, it is by not being able to do those things. But technology has the power to reduce that cost down to something that an independent film could manage, where the money gap just comes down to cast, perhaps.
Exactly.
But because you look at something like that just came out, like Kong versus Godzilla, that's them just saying, forget about the story. I'm going to shotgun CGI at you and you're going to love it. And that's what they did. They just, I don't know how much of that movie actually happened in 3D space, right? Like that movie was probably 80% software. Okay. So that is the big gun they're carrying. They're saying, okay, the moat we're going to create to protect us against independent filmmakers and everybody being able to have this kind of output is we're going to spend a ton of money that they don't have to get a result through software. But the nature of software, Moore's law, means that the technology is going to drop by half, all the time. And so once we realize that, and that the technology is available, because the thing I love, and I'll wrap it on this, the thing I love about what you said is that you found the technology in a headset. So
had that technology existed outside a headset and be used for film specifically, they would have charged you more. Exactly. See what I mean? But because it exists already, it reminds me of how people were using the first Xboxes that had Connect.
Yeah. It's I do the exact same thing. I'm from.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, we gave this away for too cheap because someone found a better use for it than what we had for it, and they broke it apart. This is what, again, going back to the theme of this conversation, human ingenuity and effort and creativity just can't be stopped. Nathaniel, you have been an incredible person to have a conversation with. I hope I get to do it again. I hope it's not too long because this has been so much fun. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and on the internet, and maybe even where they can see some of your work and where they can buy the voices?
Oh yeah, definitely. They can reach me out. Like, I'm hardly on Facebook. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been up in Facebook lately, but Instagram. Like, I check my Instagram, daily. Nathaniel Nuon at I guess my Instagram tags Nathaniel Nuon is my name. I don't have a Twitter. I do have a Twitter, but I don't really use it. So, and for voices, you guys can definitely check it out. I mean, there's, I don't know, it's every platform, iTunes, Amazon, YouTube. I mean, there's like every VOD platform right now. And I think eventually it's going to, a video on demand as well. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think.
They can also check you out at nuonfilms.com.
Yeah, nuonfilms.com. Sorry,
because you have some amazing trailers about what we were just talking about and teasers about the LED wall and some of the things that you can accomplish. The studios look badass, so congratulations on that. And I think you also have nathanielnuon.com as well.
Yeah, I'm actually reworking that. Like, I was actually gonna rewrite I might just do Squarespace myself, but I'll think about redoing the website. I've been slammed with a bunch of stuff, so I don't know. But yeah, nuonfilms.com is definitely where you want to go, and I think Nuon Films Facebook too, and Nuon Films Instagram is we're trying to stay pretty active on it, but yeah, we're pretty busy on a lot of things. A lot of cool things coming up. So.
I love it, and we'll end on this. If you could provide filmmakers with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think like one piece of advice, at least for me, like I tend to look at things and, people look at it as being used for something else. And I kind of just end up with like this note too. When DSLR filmmaking changed the world, when, these digital cameras were used to take pictures, and then all of a sudden they were used to make movies. They weren't intended to do that, but we look at things and we just change, and we make it our own. Like, we can, everything that's around us, we should be able to use, to create art and to create our own films. And I just, like I said, same thing with LED wall or headsets, VR stuff. I just looked at it like, why are we not using this in filmmaking? So if we just think of it that way, everything that you look at, and it doesn't matter what you're using, whatever tool it is that could be changed into that can help you create the project that you want. I think that's the biggest thing for me, or for any independent filmmaker. Not everything that's created was for that intended use. So
exactly. Look at Viagra.
Yeah.
so heart medicine, and turns out has a secondary function that can make everyone rich and everyone happy.
Exactly. So don't look at everything that around you as its intended use. Think of outside the box. That's all.
I love it. Nathaniel, this has been a blast. Thank you for staying up with me. Enjoy the wine, enjoy the night, and enjoy the run with the voices. And I know you have another film coming out, hopefully August of this year. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground. Please don't be a stranger. And if you find yourself in Nashville or Atlanta, if I find myself down where you're at, let's get together.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'll get to the first round.
I love it. Perfect. Right, Talk soon.
All right, man.
All right, man. Peace. You've been listening to the Make It podcast. To find out more information about this week's topics, including links to relevant blog posts, projects, and indie creatives, please visit our website at www.bonsai.film. If you haven't already, you can join our podcast community on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice by searching for Make It Bonsai Creative, and the show will pop right up. You now have the opportunity to support the production of this podcast. If you love Make It and are a true fan of what we're trying to accomplish in the indie film community, please visit www.bonsai.film and click Contribute. Contributions start at only $5 monthly. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Bonsai Creative and on Facebook by searching for Bonsai Creative. You can provide feedback to us via email at contact@bonsai.film, and you can follow me, Chris, on Twitter at Flaming Your Heart. That's FLAMEINURHEART. And of course, if you're looking to take a big step towards your filmmaking success, go to www.bonsai.film and click on Services to explore a variety of offerings from keynotes and panels to pitch readiness assessments and so much more. You have everything to gain. Until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.